Life is not measured in years, it's measured in achievements. In the automotive industry, the most famous and respected brands breathe. The obvious thing about Ferrari is passion, Porsche is about precision, and Lamborghini is about exuberance. All is clear, codified, repeated, nurtured. McLaren, a brand originating from Formula One, created the most iconic supercar of the 20th century. It vanished from radar only to re-emerge 2 decades later. McLaren has produced a range of complex supercars that defy classification. The company has been a world leader, hosting iconic names, building dominant cars, and leading legendary battles, but has also faced internal struggles. They have won 21 F1 titles and designed one of the most advanced cars on the planet. However, they nearly went bankrupt twice within a decade. They sold their own headquarters and even managed to launch a hybrid supercar that was barely finished. In terms of design, it looks like no one else, with a very unique style that you can either love or totally hate. The unique aspect is creating cars that are distinct from competitors but resemble one another. For some, McLaren has created a futuristic, sci-fi-inspired sculptural language on 4 wheels. For some, these supercars are soulless, overly rational, clean and calculated, reflecting the manufacturer's style and identity. McLaren is a brand of extremes. A genius in engineering, yes, but also a management chaos, a blurry identity, strange business choices, and a history where every victory seems to be followed by a fall. Today, we're returning to the channel's basics and trying to understand this brand better. Is McLaren on par with or ahead of its competitors? Are they one of the most brilliant or just the weirdest car manufacturers in history? Before the billions, before the P1, and before the Formula One titles, there was a sick kid, Chloe Uli, at 9 years old because of a degenerative bone disease, who was told he might never walk normally. That kid is Bruce McLaren. He's from New Zealand, and he's going to prove that you can defy the odds. After a month in the hospital, he spent almost 3 years in a home for disabled children. Despite spending 2 years in a wheelchair, he gradually relearns to walk. However, contact sports are now off limits for him. And since his father is a mechanic, he takes up a new hobby that will change his life: racing. He learns to drive in his backyard and starts taking part in races with his father's Austin 7, right after getting his license. At just 15 years old, in 1956, he started studying engineering in Auckland, on a campus adjacent to the airfield hosting the New Zealand Grand Prix. From then on, his sole goal was to become a pilot and go faster to prove he could overcome his handicap. In 1957, he placed 5th in his debut New Zealand Grand Prix, earning his first scholarship. Driver to Europe, a one-way trip to the automotive world's heart, where everything happens. The late 1950s saw gentleman drivers, barrier-free circuits, and semi-professional teams. Out of the 11 races on the F1 calendar, 8 take place on the Old Continent or in Great Britain, while North America favors closed ovals like the Indianapolis 500. From the start, Bruce impresses with his composure and sharp racing mind. In 1959 at Sebring, he became the youngest Formula One Grand Prix winner ever at age 22. A record that stood for 44 years until Fernando Alonso broke it in 2003, followed by Sebastian Vettel in 2008 and Max Verstappen in 2016. The kind of guy you challenge but not at a red light. You get it? Our New Zealand driver is a prodigy. He's fast, consistent and smart. He's got that thing. Plus he's got an engineer's mind. In a world still dominated by instinctive and tough drivers, he's a fast driver who also knows how to build, think and correct. In 1963, he started a crazy project that set everything in motion for what I'm about to tell you. By creating his company, McLaren Motor Racing, and his very first car, the M1. He continues driving and winning races in the Pacific and Europe. In 1966, he wins the 24 Hours of Le Mans in a Ford Grand Touring. In 1967, he dominates the Can-Am, and the following year, he wins his first Formula One Grand Prix with his own car, driver and constructor. He is one of the few in history to have excelled in every aspect of motorsport while being victorious simultaneously. He optimizes his cars for lightness and grip, not just power, it's effective. In 1970, McLaren became the only team to compete in Formula One, Can-Am and the Indy 500 simultaneously. He aims to quit F1 racing to concentrate on developing his vehicles such as the M6 Grand Touring, McLaren's debut road car that he drives daily, and that's classy. Tragically, the story of this car concludes on June 2, 1970 when Bruce tests one of his creations at the Goodwood circuit. At nearly 275 km/h on a straight line, the rear hood detaches, causing the car to lose balance. At that speed, Bruce can't avoid crashing off the track at full speed into a race marshal's hut. The crash is fatal. He was 32. Despite competing in only 100 Grand Prix races and never becoming world champion, Bruce McLaren's legacy exceeded his statistics. The brand could have died with him, and it would have been understandable, but that's what makes McLaren's story so peculiar. It's not the end, but the beginning. Today, people worldwide are driving cars bearing his name. His racing team, taken over by his associates, would go on to dominate Formula One. Under the leadership of Teddy Mayer, McLaren becomes a true winning machine. In 1974, Emerson Fittipaldi wins the Drivers' Championship and McLaren gets its first Constructors' title. 2 years later, James Hunt does it again. The 76 season is a thriller in itself. Niki Lauda with Ferrari comes close to death in a fire. Hunt wins in the chaos. McLaren enters popular legend, but that's nothing compared to what's about to happen. In the 80s, McLaren merges with Ron Dennis's Project 4 Racing, a real character in Formula One, both obsessive and meticulous. He brings along another giant, engineer John Barnard, who introduces a brilliant concept, the carbon fiber monocoque. As a result, they produce more than just a car, they create a true war machine. Ron Dennis manages to convince Niki Lauda to come out of retirement and join the team, and during the year 84, Lauda and Alain Prost face off in an internal Cold War, and Prost loses the World Championship title by half a point. But the most memorable moment comes in 1988 when McLaren produces the MP44, arguably the most dominant car in Formula history. Honda engine, perfect chassis, and explosive driver duo once again. Ayrton Senna vs Alain Prost, 15 wins in 16 races, a record and lesson in domination. The atmosphere is unbearable. The two drivers despise each other, crashing, accusing, and glaring at one another like enemies. In 1989 at Suzuka, Prost intentionally collided with his teammate, but Senna was disqualified. McLaren suffers a major loss, and Ayrton Senna takes his revenge the next year. Prost had moved to Ferrari, but the Brazilian got his revenge by causing another collision at the race start. Although it led to his championship victory, the world found that behind McLaren's perfect facade was a team plagued by division, violence, and politics. The 90s fluctuate between victory and turmoil like a roller coaster. After Senna's last title in 1991, it would take a few years before Mika Hakkinen brought the team a new driver's title. In 1998 and 1999, after Ferrari's domination, Renault achieved double wins in the 2005 and 2006 seasons, followed by 2007. McLaren's dream driver duo, two-time world champion Fernando Alonso and rookie Lewis Hamilton. But McLaren, even though they have signed the reigning world champion, remains true to their policy of not favoring either driver, unlike other teams. As expected, Lewis Hamilton, Ron Dennis's protege, faced the inevitable outcome. The two drivers fight on the track and the team falls apart internally. That's when the Spygate scandal breaks out. McLaren is accused of stealing 780 pages of technical documents from Ferrari, resulting in a $100 million fine, exclusion from the Constructors' Championship, and public humiliation. It's the biggest scandal in modern F1 history. There are many high-quality YouTube videos on the topic, but remember that McLaren, once the epitome of professionalism, became associated with cheating. Once again, amid chaos and success. In 2008, Hamilton won his first world championship with McLaren, in the last corner of the last lap of the last race. But after that, it happens again, everything unravels. In 2015, McLaren restarted its partnership with Honda, which proved to be a bad decision due to technical setbacks and inconsistent management. The engine is slow, unreliable, catastrophic. Alonso shouts his legendary Grand Prix 2 engine in on the radio, and the discomfort is total. Back then, McLaren had lost its luster in the eyes of Formula One fans, clearly appearing as a team adrift. After hitting rock bottom and a 26-year title drought, the team returned to the top by winning the Constructors' Championship in 2024. In a season that was marked by intense competition between their two drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, this internal rivalry pushed them to surpass themselves and directly contributed to McLaren's success. However, to defend its Constructors' Championship in 2025, the team chose to maintain its policy of driver equality. Given the profiles involved, F1 fans are wondering not if, but when a clash between the two will occur this season. So we've seen it on the track. McLaren has proven everything, but the track is a closed world. Bruce's unfulfilled dream was to make his cars go beyond the racetrack. In 1992, the racing team finally achieved this feat. The McLaren F1 brings Formula One technology to the street with an incredible car that lives up to its name. It's not just a supercar, it's a statement. An engineer's answer to an enthusiast's question: what happens if we forget about cost, production, and comfort constraints and just make the best car possible? Designed by a team of 30, including McLaren Racing's brilliant technical director Gordon Murray, its goal is to make Ferraris look rustic, not to beat them. The goal for this F1 was to make the best production car ever built or that could ever be built. With its BMW naturally aspirated V12 engine, 627 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds, and a top speed of 386 km/h, it was just an unidentified flying object in the 90s. Another figure that demonstrates its significant lead: weighing 1,140 kilograms, it's 200 kilograms lighter than a Ferrari Enzo, which debuted a decade later. It became legendary for its rarity, only 106 units were made, and most of all, for being the world's fastest production car. Beyond the numbers, one detail made it famous. The driver's seat is centered, just like in Formula 1. Not on the left, not on the right, but in the middle, because it's the best position, because it makes sense, and because it's McLaren. It lacks driving aids, turbo, and compromises. This car proved the brand could compete with others right from its first vehicle. 13 years after the F1, the first McLaren of the 21st century was the MP412C, which wasn't a dream car, but an engineer's car. An efficient and fast car, but lacking the allure of a Ferrari 458 Italia. The criticism it received was that it failed to generate excitement. In 2013, the Woking-based manufacturer turned the tables with the P1. A different car, emotional and simply incredible. This P1 in terms of design is almost the opposite of the F1. Sure, it still has breathtaking proportions, but it stands out with fluid, liquid and almost organic lines. That's the genius of this car. It's packed with active aerodynamics, but you barely notice it. The shapes breathe and the surfaces flow together naturally, without interruption. A design by Frank Stevenson, the creator of many automotive icons such as the Fiat 508C Competizione and Maserati MC12, who says he was inspired by the living world and especially by wasps. The P1 is the first modern hypercar where aerodynamics didn't sacrifice style. Thanks to its design, it resembled a reptile ready to pounce. It was biomechanical yet never clinical. And for once, a McLaren made you say wow. Although iconic today, it was unfinished upon release. The hybrid system was buggy, the interface unfinished, and some interior elements appeared prototype-like a hastily dressed Formula 1 car. McLaren then began rapidly cloning its own formula, creating cars that were overly similar. Between 2014 and 2022, Woking released around 15 models with identical technical bases, V8 engines, and distinctive design language. McLaren's design codes feature boomerang-shaped headlights, sculpted sides, and taut non-geometric lines. McLaren's signature bio-organic style is polarizing, but it makes their cars indistinguishable from each other. 650 SS7, 120 SS600 Lieutenant, 570 SS7, 165 Lieutenant. Way too many cars in too little time, and they're pretty hard to tell apart, even for an enthusiast if you're not an expert on the brand. Despite their unique, very aerodynamic and polarizing design, collecting them is a bit like collecting jellyfish. Pretty and fascinating, but interchangeable. In the end, you don't get attached to any of them. To top it off, McLaren released a new road monster, in addition to these relatively accessible cars, to remind all of its core business, performance. The McLaren Senna, a controversial car, marks a radical shift in McLaren's approach. The flowing curves have been replaced by a technical, aerodynamic style that prioritizes function over form, creating a war machine devoid of seductive elements. And it's consistent, but it lacks finesse. McLaren is shifting into radical functionalism, a logic that somewhat forgets the extra soul and thrill it has given us until now. The same will hold true for the brand's newest model, the W1. The W1 marks the grand return of a legendary codename after the F1 and P1 promising a new chapter. But let's be honest, the W1 was poorly received, kind of like my last video. It was meant to represent the Renaissance, but it resembles a randomly generated car from a Grand Theft Auto tuning garage, lacking personality. The P1 made people dream, but the W1, despite being an incredible, fast and technologically advanced car, sparks debate. With today's advanced car manufacturing techniques, manufacturers have two options. Use the precision of industrial tools to give their car, use taut, rigid lines for a serious look, or complex organic lines to express futurism or sophistication. We can categorize each manufacturer into one of two groups. The issue with the W1 is that it attempts to fit into both. It must be emotional as a supercar while showcasing its technical prowess. This direction denies the fluidity that was once part of the brand's identity. By incorporating Formula 1 technology into its top road car, McLaren is shifting from sensual design to an aerodynamically sharp aesthetic. While the Ferrari whispers like an Italian diva, the W1 talks to you with an Excel spreadsheet and an airflow rate. Its design aims to win, not seduce. It has functional beauty but lacks emotional appeal, and its perfection fails to touch the heart. A car you admire, but don't necessarily love. Perhaps the real issue with the W1 is that it was created by a brand that can no longer afford to make errors. McLaren aimed to showcase its Formula 1 expertise with a bold design, even if it meant compromising on some aspects. McLaren faced its greatest crisis since its founder's death in 2020, constantly battling for survival behind the scenes. COVID froze sales, customers disappeared, and the brand, which relies on a model that's extremely dependent on volume, collapsed. With poor F1 results and a $312 million loss in 1 year, to save itself, the manufacturer had to sell its factory and headquarters in Woking. For 170 million, the brand became a tenant, laying off over 1,200 people, including some long-time staff. They took out a 150 million emergency loan from the Bahrain Sovereign Fund. That's when you realize McLaren, unlike Ferrari or Porsche, lacks a mass-market model to cushion the blow, a lifestyle line, or economies of scale. McLaren is a thoroughbred, but a hungry thoroughbred because it has a structure that's too brilliant to be profitable. The brand has always been proud to do everything itself. Homemade carbon chassis, aerodynamics, and supercar engines are all part of a maximum vertical integration strategy. Obviously, it's very noble, but financially it's suicidal. Developing new models is expensive, and releasing a car every 8 months to break even results in selling. Oversaturated luxury lineup with excessive similar versions and plummeting resale value, the 570S 600 Lieutenant and 720S models confuse customers and dilute the brand image. The Artura was meant to be McLaren's shining star amidst the challenges, featuring a new platform, hybrid twin-turbo V6 lighter wiring, and in-house electronics. Upon its 2021 release, it was a major disappointment. Cascading delays, electronic bugs, software problems, technical recalls. Some customers waited more than a year for their car, and those who received it spent more time in the shop than on the road. Ultimately, the machine restart was a commercial, technical, and media disaster. To stay afloat, McLaren sells patents, simulators, and Formula A team shares. Ultimately, even their assets are auctioned off. A group of American investors acquires a 49% stake in McLaren Racing. McLaren Technologies operates independently from the group and continuously seeks funding to maintain operations. Fortunately, all 399 units of the W1 at over 2.5 million euros each are sold. But this is expected for such an iconic model, which is an investment for many customers. The thing now is going to be to get back to higher volumes with more accessible models in order to make it. Otherwise, every supercar will become a gamble, seen not as a fantasy, but a lucrative product made to comfort investors rather than inspire adult dreams. Today, all prestige brands are relying on the same weapon to survive, the sport utility vehicle, in my first video on this channel 2 years ago. The director of Porsche's Cayenne program and Ferrari's Puro Sangue became the general manager at McLaren. I predicted to you that the next luxury brand to launch in sport utility vehicle would be McLaren, and well, it's done. The brand is indeed preparing its sport utility vehicle. Ferrari's Puro Sangue, Aston Martin's DBX, and Lamborghini's Urus have boosted the brand's sales significantly. Even Lotus has given up on the matter, and McLaren, which resisted for a long time, really doesn't have a choice anymore. The sport utility vehicle, expected by 2028, will feature a V8 engine. Probably a hybrid and apparently designed in partnership with another brand. In terms of positioning, you should expect it to be very high-end. Priced over 300,000, designed to rival the Urus Performante, the design remains secret but is teased as radically McLaren. Once it's revealed, I'll immediately let you know. It'll likely be a huge success. Obviously, every time that people cry sacrilege, but in reality, it'll be a lifeline for the brand, just like with Bentley and Aston Martin. Because the market has proven that supercar customers also have some more practical needs. Aston's release of the DBX allowed them to also launch the DB2s and Vanquish models. What if this sport utility vehicle helps McLaren recover financially, continue investing in F1 and develop future sports cars? Perhaps we must accept it, just as we have for other brands, even if we all secretly prefer supercars. Because McLaren is a brand of paradox, a company that lives in excess. Between technical brilliance and financial turmoil, avant-garde and disarray, control and pandemonium. It built the fastest car of the 90s, the most advanced of the 2010s. It wrote F1 history but also sold its factory, laid off teams, cheated, fought and lost, yet it persists. And even with its next model, McLaren may never be the most profitable, loved or consistent automaker, and perhaps it has earned its reputation as the strangest manufacturer in history. But it will remain the most resilient historic sports brand which, no matter what comes its way, never gives up on anything.